Okay, hello everybody. Okay, so yes, I wanted to do this stream to share a little bit of my experience working on the Docs Squad for the WordPress 6.6 release. So yeah, I would like to talk about the timelines, the specific tasks to do, some resources that I found useful during this process, which by the way, it hasn't finished yet, but I feel that the most important milestone for the Docs Squad is the release of release candidate 1. So that version was released like a few days ago, and I feel that the most important part is done. So yeah, that's why I wanted to share my thoughts now that they are fresh, and before I forget them. Yeah, so yeah, let's start. Reviewing things, I haven't prepared much, but I just want to throw all my thoughts, and in case it's useful for someone else taking this role in the future. So how does everything start? Well, everything starts with this post where you are assigned as part of the documentation squad. In this case, we were Jenny, Giuseppe, and myself. I don't know exactly when this was published, but was some point here, like by the end of May or something like that. So yeah, we will comment this timeline later. So when I was officially part of the squad, I started like reading a lot of things, and I decided to keep a list of all these resources. So I created this document that has been really useful for me. So that's one thing that I would recommend to anyone in this role, to compile all the resources in a document that can be shared by the members of the team. So there's like a point of reference for these resources. So what type of resources do I have in this document? Well, everything that I thought it could be useful. To start with, the post of the development cycle, where we can see not only the members of the teams, but also the timeline in terms of dates. This is, I think, the first thing I wanted to have clear, and that's why I created this diagram here. So yeah, that's the first thing that needs to be clear, because depending on the dates, you need to organize your time to get on time for the different milestones. Then there are a set of documents that are really useful to understand the features that are going to be part of a WordPress release. I would recommend the roadmaps posts about the release, and especially the source of truth. I think this is a good map of the features that are going to be part of a WordPress release, and that helps you as part of the documentation lead to as part of the documentation team to have clear which features you need to have under your radar to make sure that those features are properly documented. What else? Yeah, for example, these posts to test WordPress features are also useful because they usually highlight the most important features. So for me, one rule would be try to ensure that the most important features are documented, or at least there is an issue to get that thing documented. Okay, so this is the document with all the resources. I have a lot of things in this document. For example, I thought it was useful to compile the work done by previous teams. For example, I wanted to have clear the persons, like the people involved in the documentation squads for previous WordPress releases, in case I wanted to ask something to them. So that's one of the exercises that I did, and I compiled this information here. Also, the dev node tracking issue, which I will comment about it later. The field guide, to have these previous field guides as reference to write the one we need to publish for the WordPress release, and the dashboards that have been used in previous releases. And yeah, any document that I thought could be useful, I compiled like the last 5 WordPress releases. And then I started with the timeline. So I kind of copied this here, but I highlighted some specific dates. For me, the launch of beta 1 is an important milestone because it kind of set the starting point of all the work. Although the sooner you start doing the work, the better. But yeah, this kind of the things start moving from this beta 1 release. So these are the timelines. I'm going to use this diagram because I think it's a bit more clear. So, okay, but before the timeline, I want to explain some clear ideas about the documentation work. So what is the goal of the documentation squad for a WordPress release? So there are like 2 areas to document. On one side we have the technical documentation, and on the other side we have the end user documentation. So end user documentation is the documentation that we have So this is documentation that explains all the visual aspects of WordPress, like the interface, the user experience. So that's the end user documentation. That work is usually tracked in this repository. So one part of the job is to create the proper issues here. So all the updates that affect the user experience, the interface of WordPress is properly documented. So that's one goal. And there is another area, which is the technical documentation, which I think is the one with more strict milestones and the part that require most of the work, from my point of view. And what do we need to do regarding technical documentation? So the most important goal is to have all dev nodes published by the time of release candidate 1. That's why I said earlier that release candidate 1 is a is an important milestone for the Docs squad. So what are dev nodes? So I have here a link. No, I have here. So dev nodes are specific posts that are published in Make WordPress core to document specific features related to developers. So they are updates targeted to developers, or they announce or document changes that affect to developers mostly, or that are for the interest of developers. So for every WordPress release, you can find the dev nodes by using these tags, dev nodes 6.6, but you can find the dev nodes for 6.5 with this and so on. So as you can see, if we see the dev nodes, we can see that there are a lot of dev nodes published. So this is all the posts. There are I think there are these ones and a few more that have been published after this list. So one mission of the documentation squad is to get all these dev nodes published. So who writes these dev nodes? Well, the developers. So it's responsibility of the developers to write these dev nodes because they are the experts in the topic that is covered in these articles. So our work as part of the documentation squad is to organize the work, to make sure that all the nodes are published, to contact the developers and tell them, hey, we need this dev node to be done by this date, and so on. So we need to have all the dev nodes published by this date, and with all the dev nodes, we also need to take care of the publication of a document called the field guide. The field guide, which is a compilation of all the dev nodes, and sometimes there are some additional information that is added here. So this is kind of the map of content of all the dev nodes for a WordPress release. This document is super important for developers because it's like a guide of all the changes that are coming in the WordPress release. Coming, I say, because we publish this field guide by the time of the release candidate 1, but the stable version is not published until a few weeks after. So for developers, it's important to have these dev nodes and this field guide published by this time, so there's enough time for them to test their plugins, their themes, their projects, provide feedback and fine-tune, so core contributors can fine-tune properly the product in time for the final release. So this date is very important. So for the docs squad, it's very important to make sure that all dev nodes are published and that whenever all dev nodes are published, publish the field guide. Okay, what else? What else? Yeah, okay. How do we organize the work? Well, the work is usually organized by using a WordPress dashboard. So for example, this is the one that we used for WordPress 6.6, and for every dev node that needs to be published, we create a card here. So in this way, we keep track of all the dev nodes that needs to be published. And we assign a developer, which is usually the developer that has merged the pull request or that has provided a solution for the track ticket. Okay, so this is for developer documentation for dev nodes. Okay, I'm going back to this diagram. But for developer documentation, there are like two big sources of work. On one side, we have the Gutenberg repository, which is all the work that affects the block editor, but it's an important part of every WordPress release. So this is an area that needs to be treated in a special way, so to speak. And on the other side, we have all the work that happens directly in the core of WordPress, and that work happens in track tickets. So we need to check the work happening on the Gutenberg repository and the work happening in the track tickets. So how do we keep track of the work that requires a dev node, for example, in order to add? Let me see if I can find So how do we add a card here? Well, I think I have this documented here somehow. Here. Yeah, here. So, for example, for track tickets, every track ticket has a series of keywords. So these are all the tickets that are part of WordPress 6.6, and we can look for needs dev node. We can say, okay, so let's look for the tickets that belongs to the milestone 6.6 and keywords contains it dev node. So if we update, here we can see a list of track tickets with the keyword needs dev node. In this case, the developer has previously added this keyword to indicate that there is this work affect final developers like the extenders, and we need to document that change so they are aware of that. And the best way to do that is to create a dev node. From that dev node, after that there may be additional documentation, but at least we should have this dev node explaining what is the change. So one part of the job is to take all these track tickets and create cards for each one of these tickets. Then regarding the Gutenberg repository, I think I have here a link. Regarding the Gutenberg repository, so what happens with Gutenberg and WordPress? Gutenberg works in cycles of 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks there is a plugin released, and each plugin release has a specific version. So for every WordPress release, there's a selection of some of these Gutenberg versions, and those are included in the final WordPress release. So for example, for WordPress 6.6, the versions that were included were from 17.8 to 18.4. All these Gutenberg versions were included in WordPress. So we need to check the pull requests that were merged belonging to each one of these versions, and check which one of them has a specific label that needs dev node. So we need to keep track also these issues and ensure that there is a dev node for this pull request. So these are here. But in the case of the block editor, it's easier to keep track of the work in the repository itself. So what is usually done is creating a tracking issue for the dev nodes. So this is the tracking issue that I created, and you explain here, okay, here are the dev nodes for the Gutenberg version from 17.8 to 18.5, and here you add all the pull requests that have been merged with the niche dev node label, and here you start pinging developers. As you can see, there is a long conversation with a lot of developers, and they start creating drafts, and for those drafts there is a review, and once there is the proper review and the proper proofreading, we start publishing dev nodes until we reach a point where all the dev nodes are published. As you can see here, there are some pull requests that are grouped, and there is a dev node published compiling the changes of different pull requests. Okay. So regarding let's go back to the diagram. So we need to make sure that the dev nodes coming from the tracking issue, this is coming from Gutenberg issues or coming from the project dashboard, which is where we mainly track the track tickets. We need to ensure that the dev nodes are published. Regarding dev nodes, there are some standalone posts, which means that there is like an individual dev node to cover a specific feature, like this one, grid layout type or site-wide background images in WordPress 6.6. But there are other type of posts where we compile like minor changes or dev nodes that are not big enough to be a standalone post. For example, this one, Unified Extensibility APIs in 6.6. This post covers the work done in all these issues. Or for example, whenever there is no clear classification, there's usually a miscellaneous dev node with all the small changes that have been done or that cannot be clearly classified. For WordPress 6.6, we published miscellaneous editor changes in WordPress 6.6 for those small changes belonging to the block editor, but also miscellaneous developer changes. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, in the field guide, it will be clearer. Miscellaneous developer changes, which cover the changes that are okay, me dicen que apenas se oye. Okay, let me see if I can fix this. Okay, hello. Yeah, sorry, I'm a newbie in this. So does it sound better now? The voice. Hello. Okay, I can see here. I have like some. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Ryan. Okay, I was saying maybe I need to get closer to the microphone. I don't know. These are techniques that I need to learn. Okay, I was what I was saying. I was saying that yeah, there are standalone dev nodes, but there are also miscellaneous dev nodes where we compile the like small changes. And once we have all of that, we publish the field guide, which is a compilation of all the dev nodes that have been published. It's like a summary of all the work that has been done, and this is a very useful reference for developers. Okay, so in terms of timeline, so now we have clear what to do. We need to ensure that the dev nodes are published by this date. How do we do that? Well, we ask the developers, we keep track of the changes, and you start conversations with developers in any place you can, like in a Slack or via direct message or via GitHub, for example. In this tracking issue is very useful to be transparent about the work to do and to have conversation with the developers. For example, from time to time, I was added here like some reminders. Hey, we need these dev nodes. And for example, let's see if I can from in core, I was sharing some reminders. Well, I cannot find the post, but the communication with developers for the work for the dev nodes regarding the block editor, you can ask in the core editor Slack channel, and the communication with developers for dev nodes from track tickets, you can communicate with the developers in the core channel. So just be transparent about the work that needs to be done and add reminders so the dev nodes are published in time by a release candidate. Okay, regarding end user docs, what is the work to do? The work to do, I shared here in the docs channel. I'm going to see if I can. Yeah. Okay, so regarding end user documentation, I found that it wasn't super clear, at least for me. So I asked around, especially to the reps of the docs team. It was super useful being in WordCamp Europe, where I had the opportunity to talk with Milana, with Leo, with Stella, and this is my understanding of the what needs to be done regarding end user docs. So the most important thing to do is to have the issues created by the time of the final release. So by this time, all the issues needed for end user docs is to be created, and the repository, I think I have it somewhere. Issue, yeah, the issues needs to be created here. So that's the most important thing, and from there, the more issues are completed, the better. But at least by the time of the release, the Okay. I'm having interaction in the chat, but as I am all alone, I don't know very well how to manage this anyway. I'm saying hello. Well, I was saying that regarding end-user docs, the most important thing is that by the time of the final release, all the issues are created. And from there, the more issues are completed, the better. Okay, for the issues, also there is a specific format. We can check here. Well, also those, I'm going to close this, I'm going to close this, I'm going to close this. Those issues are also tracked here in the project dashboard. So for example, we have this issue, and you can see that each issue has a specific format. I think that there is a template. Let me see if we can find. If we create a new issue, I think new release end user issue. Yeah, there's a template. So whenever you have to create a new issue for a WordPress release, you can just use the template. Yeah, I was here. So use the template, because there is a work to do. Once we detect that there is a change that affects the interface of WordPress, we need to first detect the article that needs to be updated, or if there is a new article that needs to be created, the specific update coming in the WordPress release, in our case, the WordPress 6.6, that are related to the topic covered in the article, and the specific tasks to do. For example, here, if we filter by this release, we can see the update and the specific tasks to do, like make sure videos, if any, are up to date, add alt tags for the images, and so on. So this is the work to do for the end user documentation. And how do I detect the changes that needs to be documented? Well, that's another exercise that needs to be done, and I shared here a possible strategy. I think the most important reference, the most important document to check is the source of truth. This source of truth, which starts as this is a document that is usually shaped by Anne McCarthy. I think she actually published this in her personal blog, but it's available in a very early stage. So this is a very valuable resource, because also I think that some of the features are kind of labeled, and let me see. Yeah, end user. So in this document, if we check for end user, yeah, we can see that some of the features are already marked as some features that require end user documentation. So we can start from there. Check in this document, check the features that require end user documentation, understand what's the update about, and create the proper issue. Once we have that, we can go and check the Gutenberg changes that are part of the WordPress release. And every Gutenberg release has a specific document that is called What's New in Gutenberg. Let me see. well, before that, there is another step, because all the issues that are included, no, needs dev node, it needs user documentation. So we come here and we check the, yeah. If we check the pull requests that have been labeled as needs user documentation, these are changes that also needs to be documented in the end user documentation side. So we need to create a proper issue, so this work is done at some point. Because once the issue is created, the documentation team has some processes that works really well. There are some meetings, there are some triage every two weeks. So eventually this issue will get done. But it's part of the job of the documentation squad for our WordPress release to create those issues. And once we have covered the source of truth, and once we have covered the issues with needs user documentation, another step that we can do is to check the what's new in Gutenberg for all the Gutenberg releases that are going to be part of the WordPress release, and check from these explanations the changes that affect the interface of WordPress. And from that, we create the issue in the way that we said earlier. Okay, so I think that I have covered the more or less my thoughts on this. Some key ideas. The documentation squad for our WordPress release, there are two big areas, technical documentation and end user documentation, or documentation for developers and end user documentation. The technical documentation for me is the one that requires the majority of the work, or at least the timelines are more strict. So regarding developer documentation, there are two sources of information: GitHub issues and track tickets. There are labels or keywords that helps to detect the work that require a specific dev node. The organization of the work is done via a WordPress dashboard, like this one, but also by using a specific tracking issue like this one. So these are great tools to organize the work and to communicate with developers, and to see the status of each one of the tasks. Perfect. Well, I forgot to say that there are several documents that needs to be read, like how to write developer notes, the documentation style guide. I have compiled also these documents here. And there are also some really good documents from previous colleagues of the documentation squad, which I recommend to read. For example, Milana shared a set of videos about how to create this GitHub project, which I found it really useful. Also, how to do some triage of the tickets, and how to manage project views and filters. But I think that this has improved since she published these videos, because I think if you create right now a project, there is a template. If we say new project, all templates, yeah, you can see that there is a template to create documentation. So there is a lot of things that is already prepared, and you don't need to create that from scratch. Okay, what else? Documentation. Okay, another thing that I wanted to mention, once we have, let's go to the diagram again. Once we have published the field guide, or in order to publish the field guide, there are a few things to take into account, because those are very useful for the extenders. So let's focus on the field guide. I'm going to close. I'm going to close this, and let's focus on the field guide. So the field guide is a compilation of all the dev nodes. So in order to publish the field guide, we need to have all the dev nodes already published. So that's why it's important to have the dev nodes published a day before the date for the release candidate, or a few days before. Also, before I continue talking about this, the dev nodes require a process of drafting the dev node, having a review, having a proofreading, publish it. So there are some recommendations regarding when things should be done, and it's recommended that by the time of beta 1, all the drafts start to be shared, and by the time of beta 2, ideally all the drafts for the dev nodes are published. So there is enough time during these weeks to review and publish. So from here we can start publish dev nodes. So by this time all dev nodes are published. So it's our work to check the issues, check the track tickets, ping the developers, offer our help to see if we can help move forward with the tasks. So by this date we have all the dev nodes published. So once we have the dev nodes published, by this date we need to publish the field guide, actually before the release candidate is published. And I like to say here that it doesn't need to be 100% perfect. I mean, it needs to compile all dev nodes, but I think it's normal that after this is published, some additional dev nodes are added, because something is detected when the field guide is published. So that's normal, but at least the majority of the nodes should be published. And there is another thing that is a bit tricky, which is the new and modified hooks. When I published this, Milana told me that, hey, we need to also add this information because this is useful for developers. Because this link, which is usually available for every, for example, for each version, we have this documentation, but for the new version, it doesn't exist, because this page will only be available when the final WordPress version is released. So how do we get this information? How do we get the list of modified filter hooks, new filter hooks, and new action hooks. So, well, what I did is it can be done in several ways. One way is to go to clone WordPress develop. I'm going to change here WordPress develop and change to the branch 6.6. And for example, there are some comments that indicates the changes for a specific version. So I haven't tried this, but I guess that looking for this text will give you all the changes that have been added. The thing is that this gives you the changes for everything, including functions, classes, or everything. But the most relevant information for developers is just hooks. So how did I get this list in an effective way? So what I did is I cloned the WP.org developer. So WP.org developer is the repository that contains the theme, contains the theme and some of the features that are used in this site, in developer.wordpress.org. Among the things that include this repository is all the logic that generates the documentation. So for example, the blog editor documentation, this is generated from markdown files that are included here. So whenever there are some new content in this repository after a pull request has been merged, I think there is a cron, I don't know if it's every 30 minutes or so, and there is a process that is triggered by some logic here that take all the markdowns here and generate the final views here. So this is actually a WordPress installation. So what it does is it generates it imports the markdown content into this WordPress installation, into these posts. And another thing that this repository manages is for the comments that we have in the code. Okay, for all these comments, it generates the code reference. It generates these pages from those comments. So because the information for 6.6.0 is not available, what I did is I created a local version of this, but updated to the last version. So let me rephrase that. Let me rephrase this. So what I did is I cloned this version of WordPress. I cloned it and passed it to the process that generates this information. So locally, I was able to get this view for 6.6.0. Okay, how did I do that? So let me change for WordPress WP.org developer. Okay, so here the this repository, after you clone it, you have to install some dependencies. This is documented here. So yeah, there are some dependencies defined in Composer. Then you do a build. Then you launch a Docker version. So I have this already working here. You can see I have a local version of developer resources, and I have a local version of all of this. But also, as you can see here, I have a local version of 6.6.0, and here it's very easy to just go to hooks and see the list of the hooks that have been added or modified. So how did I get my local copy to parse this version of WordPress? So what I did is, if we check the package JSON, we can see that the parse script actually runs custom command of WordPress CLI, which is dev-hub parse. And if you check the code, this command, I think, let me see if we can find this. Okay, let me see if we can see the code where this is. No, this is crazy. But this is documented. The code can be found there, and we can see that there are some parameters that we can pass to this command, and one parameter is the source path. So we can pass a specific WordPress installation, but this is done internally. So we need to clone the specific version of WordPress internally in the bash that is internal of inside Docker. So in order to get to that version, we what do we do is we enter into the bash. Okay, how do we get to the bash? Yeah, here. Yeah. So we enter into the file system of the Docker containers that are running, and here we can download our WordPress version, and I actually downloaded here in TMP. So as you can see here in TMP, I downloaded WordPress Develop, and here you can see all the this is actually WordPress Develop, which is this WordPress Develop is this repository, which, as you can see, there are some versions, and we have a 6.6 version. So we need to clone this repository, change the branch to the 6.6, and we will have the code for that version, or at least until that point of the development, which should be enough, because by the time of the release candidate, there shouldn't be any addition. So we can kind of ensure that all the hooks that have been added or modified until this point are not going to change during this this time. Okay, so what I did, as you can see, I'm on branch 6.6 and I have the WordPress installation in this path. So if we check the path is var, WB, blah, blah, WordPress develop. And this is the path that I passed here with an special attention that the code is actually in SRC. So we need to, here is the code that we really want to parse. So with this is something that I added. As you can see, this is not part of the original installation. I just added this this argument. We can just do this change, cloning this repository, changing to the branch 6.6, and checking the proper path inside this file system and passing that path here to the parse. Once we have that, we can just follow the instructions here, because at some point, and I mean these instructions, yarn setup tools, yarn build, yarn start, and yarn setup, because in this yarn setup, if we go and check the package.json, in this setup, we can see that it does two things: setup WP and yarn parse. And this yarn parse is the one that we added here. So after this finishes, we will have our local installation pointing to 6.0. So from here, what was the work that I did? Okay, I went through each one of the hooks. I checked the path, and I went to the track ticket. Where was this? Let me. There was a view. Let me see if again tickets. Browse source. So we go here to tags. No, to branches. We go here to 6.6, and here we have the code. And if we go to SRC, we can take where were we? Okay, I'm going to close this. Yeah, here we can take this path. WP includes. So this is the file that contains this filter. What we can do is access the blame view for this file. And then we can look for this filter, and we can check what I did is, because I had the changelog, I checked the changelog pointing 6.6 version, and I just looked for this string. So added the fetch attribute, and this is the change set. So this is the information that I added in the field. I created the list, and if we go to the field guide, if we go to the field guide here in the new modified hooks, we can see that for WP preload resources, we can see that the change set is 57789, which is this one. So I did this exercise with all the hooks that are listed here, but as you can see, there are only 2 pages, so there were like 20 of them. So yeah, it's something that could be done in, I think I did this in 3 hours or something like that, or a few hours. So yeah, this is how I did how I got the list of the hooks, added or modified for a specific WordPress version, which was a bit tricky because this view is not available. So yeah, that was all, I think, all that I wanted to share. I hope this can be useful to someone taking this role in the future. I will try to write a blog post about this, and I will also check the contribution docs to see if there's something that I can help with. And yeah, that's all more or less. So yeah, see you in another stream.